Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Stars and Stripes Soccer. Today's episode is going to focus our friendly match against Colombia that happened on Saturday, where we got absolutely humiliated and dominated, where we lost 5-1 on home soil on a potential quarterfinal opponent for the Copa America. This is arguably the most embarrassing and worst match that we have had underneath Gregg Berhalter. Now, some people are trying to say it's just a practice game, but then all friendlies are just a practice game, and not all players are just taking a friendly casually, like some people are trying to say. Both teams put out their best players on their roster head to head. Both teams look determined to win that game. Yes, there was a lot of issues with the U.S., but at one point they were trying to win that game. But another reason why is the Copa America begins this weekend, and this match is needed to be able to see and prepare for this coming tournament. But when we're being absolutely dominated from the beginning, where we gave up 2 goals in the first 20 minutes of the match, there are major concerns that need to be raised, and there cannot be any excuses just because it's a practice game and the players obviously didn't care enough because it's only a friendly and not a competitive match. Looking at the players themselves, Anthony Robinson was one of the best left fullbacks in Europe this season, and arguably the best left back in the Premier League. Richards had one of the worst games he's had for US, in my opinion, when he's coming off a good season for Crystal Palace, especially after Glasner took control of the team. McKinney, who had 10 goals in all competitions for Juventus and was one of their best players this season, who is also being looked at by Premier League teams. Malik Tillman, who had around 20 goals and assists this season for Eredivisie champions PSV, who ended up signing him on a permanent basis. You need to start asking the question, why are some of these players who play very well for the clubs, but they struggle underneath Gregg Berhalter and the U.S.? When you look at CCV before his turnover that led to a goal, he looked physically confused and frustrated if you watched it from TNT when they zoomed in on him on the replay. Now imagine there were probably others that were, based on the situation of the game, that were probably also very frustrated and confused. And the angle did not show who it was directed towards, if it was towards another player on the team or if it was directed towards Gregg Berhalter. But our players shouldn't be getting frustrated and confused. It's only going to lead to us conceding goals, which in this case it did. And that's when you need to start asking questions. What happened during this game where our players are getting frustrated and confused, and who's at fault for that? Yes, he did make some other mistakes in that match, but this is not how he plays for Celtic. Granted, Celtic is in the Scottish Premier League and is not one of the good leagues in Europe, but still, when he plays for Celtic, he makes that pass. If you watch him, he knows how to play out the back. But during the match against Colombia, that obviously was not the case. Ever since Gregg Berhalter took control of the team, and especially after he was rehired, these players just do not transition their form from their clubs to the national team. And yes, some players are better with their national team than they are with the club, and vice versa. But that one is the majority of the players on the national team. And for me, someone who grew up playing sports, that's when you need to start asking the question of what is going on and who is at fault what is the manager / coach doing that's causing our players to always struggle, every single player? And there's other questions that you need to ask when you're looking at specifically this game, but not just this game, it's happened in other games. Why is Gio, our attacking midfielder, having to play so deep where he's practically next to the CBs when we're trying to go on the offense? Why do we start a striker who's better when he's on the transition when we want to have a game plan where we cross the ball into the box and pray? Why do we continuously use the same game plan for every match instead of making adjustments based on the opponent? And if you have ever listened to some of the press conference by the opposing managers when it comes to the U.S. men's national team matches, some managers have said that we are predictable because we do the same exact tactic, the same exact game plan for every single opponent. That's why Jamaica was able to prevent us from scoring off a cross for the majority of the match, basically for 89 minutes, almost 90 minutes. Now, some people want to try and say that our players aren't good enough, which I think is blatantly just dumb to try and say that our players aren't good enough when you look at where some of them play. Pulisic, who's coming off a 25 goal and assists in the season for Milan. You have Jedi, who had 80 interceptions in the Premier League and across all competitions, and arguably one of the best left backs in Europe this past season. And then you had Johnny, who was nominated for the Liga's U23 Player of the Season, and even won a U23 Player of the Month back in February. And again, as I mentioned about Tillman and McKinney, if they weren't good, they wouldn't be performing for their clubs like they do. This is on the coach at this point. You cannot blame it on the players saying they're not good enough. Those who say they're not good enough, all that tells me is that they don't watch our players, or at least enough games of our players over in Europe. They only watch them when they play for the U.S. When you look at the stats from this past match with Colombia, we had 53% possession. We had 15 free kicks, 15 to their 6. And only 2 of our shots were on target to their 6. And we only had 3 of our crosses that were successful. 16 crosses that match, and only 3 of them were accurate. During halftime, Berhalter said in an interview that we need to be more patient and cross more. Cross more. Seriously. Now, I don't know Spanish well enough, but from what I have seen, that during the interview with Telemundo by Musa, he said that Berhalter said that everything is going fine and just keep doing what we're doing. If that's the case, that is poor leadership by Berhalter. We were down 2-0 at half, and nothing in our game plan was going right. And he wants to try and say things are going well. Everything's fine. We don't need to make any changes. It's a failure of a coach. Any good coach would make adjustments if they're losing, especially 2-0. And when the whole game is not going your way. At halftime, we only have 48% of the possessions. But him making those comments that we need to cross more only tells me he didn't learn anything from the Jamaica match. In that Jamaica match, we made 41 crosses. 41 attempted crosses, and only 11 of them were accurate. And not a single one of those crosses led to a goal. Now, one of the goals was off a corner that was own goal, but both of Haji's goals were not off corners. There were connection passes between him and Gio, basically up the middle, where Gio is coming up the middle and passes it off to Haji, who's on the left, and he cuts it in and shoots it and scores a goal. It's a very similar situation that we had with Weah's goal against Colombia, where we came up the middle, pushed it off to coincidentally Balogun, our striker, who passes it off to the side to Weah, who scores. That wasn't off a corner. That was off the middle. We have play our best when we play up the middle. And for some reason, Berhalter is determined that we continue to play out the back, push it off to the wings, and then cross it in. Which doesn't make any sense. If it's not working for you, but one other way is working for you, logic should set in and tell you, this isn't working, but this is. Maybe I need to do the one that works. There is insane by him to constantly want to do the same thing over and over again until it works, even though it's not working. That is literally the definition of insanity. Continuously doing the same thing till something happens. Essentially, in this case, crosses into a goal. And the last time I can even remember, last time that we had crosses that led to a goal was when Pepe was subbed on against Honduras, and we came back from a 3-goal deficit and won the match. But since returning to the job, Berhalter's record has been 6 wins and 4 losses. But 3 of those wins were against the CONCACAF teams, and 3 of them were against non-top 20 teams. Overall record is 43 wins, 12 draws, 15 losses. But 8 of those wins, 7 of those draws, and 7 of those losses were against non-CONCACAF team. Break it down even more. When you look at those who are top 20 FIFA ranked teams, is a record of 5 wins, 7 draws, 6 losses. But of those 5 wins, 4 of them happen to be against Mexico. The other one happens to be against Iran. So, basically, he can't win anyone that's not outside CONCACAF, and who is also a top 20 team. If Mexico, if it's not a top 20 team with the name Mexico on it, he can't win. And don't forget, in our Iran game, it was a 1-0 game. And we pretty much parked the bus to a point where we almost got a draw and could have been eliminated from the World Cup. If our goal is to now win the Copa America, because originally they were saying that it's a building block and it's for the experience for the World Cup, and the goal is to win the World Cup or at least make a statement in the 2026 World Cup, that is a positive one, then we need a more competent manager. Now, Berhalter apologists will try to say that he's better than Klinsmann. But when you look at Klinsmann's records against non-CONCACAF teams, it's 20 wins, 6 draws, and 17 losses. So he played against far more non-CONCACAF teams than Berhalter. And Berhalter is very close to the amount of years in charge of the U.S. men's national team and getting close to the same amount of games in charge. But when you look at some of those teams that we beat underneath Klinsmann, we beat Italy, Germany, and the Netherlands. And at the time, Bosnia, who was a good team and had happened to qualify for the World Cup. Those who weren't watching back then, Bosnia was actually a good team. Now, quickly moving over to some other points about this. Berhalter, in my opinion, I've been saying this for a long time on Twitter, he's not the man for the job. And he proved it even more against Colombia. And I don't expect us to do very well against Brazil. And if I was in charge, I would fire him before the Copa America and just have BJ take charge and find a coach afterwards. But if for some reason he's still in charge, which I think he will during the Copa America, and we make it to the quarterfinals again, eliminate, he needs to be fired. It doesn't matter if we beat Bolivia, we beat Panama, we just get it handed to us by Uruguay. And whoever we face in the quarterfinals, he needs to be fired. Because There's no competition that we have left that's going to better prepare us for the World Cup than the Copa America. This Copa America needs to be used as a way to determine if we're ready or not. If you can't beat a team that's a top 20 team and a non-CONCACAF team, then he needs to be removed so we can bring someone who can. As for some of the players, our goalkeeper situation has gotten even worse. Turner, in my opinion, is no longer a man for the job. Even prior to the World Cup, he was pretty average, in my opinion, during the World Cup qualifiers. He made a lot of errors, especially against Canada. We went up there. I believe it was, I can't remember, somewhere in Ontario, not too far away from Toronto. He made quite a bit of some errors. Yes, he was a standout during the World Cup, but ever since then, he's just progressively gotten worse, and maybe some of that has to do with lack of confidence that he's been getting from his home club, Nottingham Forest. But still, he's just not the guy for the job anymore at this point. We need to find someone else. And for the Bolivian match, I think we just need to have Horvath in net. If it doesn't go well, then we just pick whoever did the better job. Either that's Turner or Horvath. But after the Copa America, we need to bring someone else in because we can't continue with this. And because we don't have to worry about World Cup qualifiers for thank God. Because with how things are, I don't know if we even qualify, even though it's CONCACAF, the worst region in all of soccer. I just don't know, especially after that Trinidad game and the way how things went with Jamaica. But this with the Copa America roster deadline being on Wednesday, the day we play against Brazil, we can't really bring anyone else in unless we do it right now. But even if it was an option, I don't think it'd be a good one, and I doubt it is one that is being considered. But after the Copa America, we need to bring in Patrick Schulte from Columbus and just give him a shot, especially if things go well for him at the Olympic. He's getting older. He's probably one of the best goalkeepers in the MLS right now. Probably of those who are ready to play for the senior team is probably the best that we have because the quality goalkeepers that we have, like Gaga and Koken and others, are just too young right now to be able to play for the senior team. But we also have problems with our center backs. And then this one I'm probably more concerned about by the time we get to 2026. Because the only ones I can see that are even competent at this point is Ream and Richards, and Remus is too old. And I know a lot of people are starting to say that he needs to stop being called up after the Copa America, and he does. And if you pay attention, he looked pretty gassed during the match against Colombia. He can't play a full 90 anymore. And that was part of my concern with him getting called up. But after he's gone, we only have Richard, CCV, Miles, McKenzie, and Ian Trusty. And I really do not like Miles. I don't think he's at that level. And I think, I saw somebody say that Berhalter is aware and he's trying to protect Miles by not having him play. And that Columbus game was, I guess you could say, is part of that example as well. But I do have faith in Trusty and McKenzie, but obviously they're not getting opportunities to show it, which I think that could be some problems down the line once we get to 2026. But I think they can cause some. If the analyst is analyzing is correct by some people like Berhalter thinking that they're not ready, then that's a major concerns. I think CCV was probably our second best center back during the World Cup, even though he only played one match. He was much better than Zimmerman and others. The times we did see him in the past cycle, I didn't have much of an issue. I mean, he made quite a bit of mistakes in that last match, and that's where it's starting to become concerning. I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that he is choosing to stay at Celtic a lot longer than he needs to, and is preventing him from growing and becoming a better player. A player that we could honestly trust next to Richards, but at this point, I don't know if you can honestly trust him anymore next to Richards. I mean, we don't have many options right now at the center back. Those that we could honestly trust are just too young, like Banks, Weiner, Tony, and Neal. It's gonna be a while, and I don't even know if they'd be ready for 2026. Now, I have a feeling that Neal will and could make it to 2026. Purely just because of the fact we just don't have any better options, and he just happens to be the oldest of those four. Where he potentially could be there a lot sooner than he needs to. Now I don't think he would be a starter, depending on how things go, but he is above the rest of them. Just a lot of it is by age, and also the fact that he's played at a higher level. But once those three are over the age of 20, I think they could be ready. It's just it won't be till 2030 till 2030 World Cup that I think that we see them. But there's a lot of things that we're going to have to change after the Copa America. Will it happen? Probably not, because who our manager is, but it needs to happen. And it does not help that we don't have World Cup qualifier. It does help that we don't have World Cup qualifiers. So let me correct that. Because it allows us to use those international windows to have friendlies and try out new players. I think at some point we'll need to bring Neal in just to see what he does. Probably this fall or as early as next year to see what he can do. And maybe some others as well. Probably give more tries with Paredes. Maybe even try doing a 3 out of the back. Now I know that's not Berhalter's style, which is kind of surprising, especially with how he wants to play the game. But we do need to try it out and see how it goes for us. This Copa America and this upcoming Brazil match definitely will tell us a lot. If we can't beat Brazil or even come close to having a good result against Brazil, and we just have embarrassing Copa America, even if we make it to the quarterfinals, a lot of things need to be changed, and that is one of them being Gregg Berhalter. But logic says that we should fire him if it doesn't go well, no matter if we make it to the quarterfinals or not. Most managers and other places would be fired by now, but this federation does not give me a lot of confidence that will happen. But I don't know at this point, because they show to be very cheap about what they do. Even though Berhalter was apparently one of the most paid managers at the World Cup, they are still quite a bit cheap because there's been other managers that we could have hired, but they were too expensive, or we had the rule about you must know English, and that's why Bielsa didn't get the job, even though he expressly said that he wanted it, and you can see what he's doing with Uruguay, that he would have been a good option for us. But a different type of news is that Josh Sargent got rolled out for the match against Colombia, and Berhalter has said that his opportunity with the Copa America is in doubt. So, based on what Berhalter has done in the past, I feel like that he'd be that one guy that will make the change for, and everybody else, the other 26, will stay. I just think that's what will happen. But surprisingly, Adams didn't start against Colombia just because Berhalter likes him. I guess he decided to give Johnny an opportunity, or maybe because they think that he's not 100%, and I think that he's not 100%. I think that's the likely case. But if they're not, they need to be dropped. But I bet that even though Adams isn't 100%, he's going to keep Adams. And I know he's very scared about the right back situation. Joe Scally is definitely not playing the way he did like last season. With Mönchengladbach, he was very inconsistent, and in times that he was good, he was pretty good, but he has been very good for us this year, except for against Colombia. He actually wasn't too bad. I definitely say that you should start him against Brazil, see if you can continue with it. But I could definitely see Berhalter keeping Shaq more when he should be getting rid of him. And for some reason, he will start Shaq more, and we will just get absolutely handed it to us at the Copa America if Shaq Moore's at right back. But Tim Tillman should also get removed. I like him at the MLS, but he's definitely not a first team player right now, and probably never will be. Sad to say, because it would be nice to have both Tillman brothers, but I also kind of feel like Berhalter is going to find an excuse to keep him in this camp, even though he should drop him for someone else. Maybe for Maloney, because we definitely need another 6 when Adams is not 100%. Which I know some people are going to say, well, they say that he's doing very well, but he came into camp not 100%. So I'm going to say he's not 100%. And he probably won't be because of the fact that he got injured for playing those 2 matches. 2.5 matches, whatever it was. But that's enough for the senior team till after the Brazilian game. Just wait and see us get shellacked. But they weren't the only U.S. national team that play. Our U19, U20 also play against Argentina on the 7th, where they end up winning 1-0, where Carol Figueroa got the lone goal. And this came from Nefasha Bershamas, which I hope I am pronouncing right. But if you go on Twitter or go on YouTube, you'll find the goal. It was a pretty good goal. It was a really good pass from, like, you could tell from the angle. This wasn't broadcast. They acknowledged it, but they just said that they weren't going to broadcast it. I don't know why U.S. Soccer does that at times, where they acknowledge the game and they don't show it on any platforms, or they say it's not going to happen, even though it does happen, because we've had quite a bit of closed-door matches. Apparently, the senior team had a closed-door match with Luton United, and no one knew about that. But onto the lineup, because information that we have on the game was based on an article that U.S. Soccer established. Those who started the game was Beavers and net. Cobb and Akimboni were at center back. Nolan Norris and Ethan Kohler were at the fullback positions. Pedro Soma, Nicholas, and Brooklyn Reigns were in the midfield. And we had David Vasquez, Marcus Zambrano, and Berchamas on the attack. The players that were subbed in during that match were Adam Boudry, Drew Murray, Luca Bombino, CJ Oni, Taha, K-Roll, Cruz Medina, Xavier Gozo, and Aiden Harangue. Rudisol and Ison were the only ones that were not used in that match, but this is a good result. Having a one, even though this is a 1 goal, it's a good result to have against Argentina, because they have some really good young players in their system. And it's a good result to have leading up against our friendly against Uruguay. And if things go well against Uruguay, it would just boost us even more for the CONCACAF U20 championship. To be able to say that we beat both or even tie or come very close to being Uruguay, it should be a big morale boost for these boys before the U20 championship, which also serves as a qualifier for the U20 championship. Those who make it to the semifinals qualify. The next match will be on the 11th against again Uruguay, and then one final national team was the U23. No one knew about this match till like I think it was the day of that the match happened. We had a closed door match against Japan on the 7th, which happens to be the same team we're going to play on the 11th. But there was absolutely no information on that match. So, and I've scoured through the whole day trying to find something, and have been monitoring some chats and has saw nothing regarding that match. So, maybe it was someplace that no one could reach, whatever. But hopefully that match, and I imagine the match will be broadcast. But that would do us today until after these next group of friendly matches or three teams will have, and I'll give my analysis on those again. But yes, again, this weekend, Copa America will begin, and once again, I'll be at the match against Bolivia and Dallas. Hopefully things go well for us. But this match against Colombia is not providing a lot of motivation, especially for all those of us who had bought tickets. I imagine there's a lot of us that are a little pessimistic about this, but that will do for us today. Catch you around next time, guys.